friends, welcome to my channel. This is to Kate. My name is Prosper. I'm a registered nurse in the UK and in Ghana. On this channel we educate nurses, prospective nurses and the general public. If you are meeting me for the first time, I will entreat you to like, to share and to subscribe. In today's presentation we are going to look at IELTS and OET. I've had some few friends asking me to advise them on which one to take. And so this presentation is going to serve as a guide to be able to help you come out with the best decision possible. And so before we get started, I'd like to state that both IELTS and OET are exams that is required for non-native English speakers who would like to work or school in an English speaking environment. Now, when you look at the two, OET is specifically designed for only healthcare professionals. And so even though you are a non-native English speaker, if you want to work or school in an English speaking environment, you are not a health worker, then OET is not an option for you. But for healthcare professionals, specifically about 12 healthcare professionals, OET has been designed for you. And so if you want to work or school in an English speaking environment and they accept both IELTS and OET, then you have two options to choose from. Before we even start, I'd like to state that both IELTS and OET have four main components. That is speaking, writing, reading, and listening. But then they differ in structure. But for today, we are not going to go into details of the structure. We are going to basically going to talk about some factors that one needs to consider in arriving at a decision. So the number one thing I would like to talk about has to do with the cost. In fact, when you compare the two, OET is much expensive than IELTS, almost twice the cost of IELTS. When I checked, the last time I checked, it was 587 Australian dollars. When you compare to pounds, it is about 320 pounds. Meanwhile, IELTS, depending on the country where you find yourself, is about 170, 190 pounds. So a maximum of about 200 pounds. And so when you compare the two, IELTS is more or less, OET is more or less twice the price or the cost. Almost. OET is almost twice the price, the cost of IELTS. And so that's the number one thing we need to consider. But of course, this is not the only factor. There are so many other factors. Another one I'd like us to talk about is the recognition. Now, when we talk about recognition, some boards and institutions have their preferences. And so before you even decide on which one to take, the first thing you ask yourself is, are they both recognized by the institution? If the two are all recognized, then you now use other factors to now decide. But if the board or the institution does not accept one, then automatically that one is ruled out. But when you compare the two, IELTS has much recognition than OET. And so you have to make sure you find out if the board or the institution accepts both, then you have the two options. The next thing I'd like us to talk about has to do with test availability and test dates. When I talk about test availability, IELTS is much popular than OET. And so IELTS is in most countries. But for OET, the popularity is not as much as IELTS. And so that is also another factor you need to consider. But of course, I know some people will not mind traveling to nearby countries or nearby towns or cities to sit for the exam. but it will all depend on you as an individual. If you are comfortable doing so, then the choice is yours. And then we also talk about test date. IELTS has much test dates compared to OET, almost every week, as compared to OET, which has it every other week. And so these are some of the factors one needs to consider. Then we come to one major factor, which is the pass rate. I know for most people, yes, this should be one of the determining factors. Now, when you look at the two, OET has much pass rate based on the research I've made, and how the people have spoken to those who have written them. But you see, this is something that we need not to be deceived, because both of them requires adequate preparation. They all require adequate preparation. But on the whole, OET has much pass rate as compared to IELTS. And so friends, these are some of the factors. I pray and hope that for those who are to make the decision, this will be helpful too for you. And then I wish you the best of luck in your preparation. For those who are yet to subscribe, I will entreat you to do so, to like and to share for others to also benefit. Thank you for your support. It is my prayer that I'll be able to come out with more videos giving you details as to how the two of them differ in structure. Thank you, and meet you in my next presentation.